decided basically that the first question I wanted to ask was is to get you known in the area by those that don't know you, and that is Chess Magnet School. I think that's what you're best known for at this point in time. So, how did it start, and how did you get involved?
Okay. How did I become... In the summer of 2004, a friend of mine sent me a note asking if I was interested in helping him build a website for his domain name, chessforkids dot something or other. And I thought, I've done a lot of websites. Chess for Kids, though, that's a pretty generic name. So I looked around on Google, and pretty soon I found a whole bunch of websites that had Chess for Kids in their name. And it didn't take me too long to eventually find that I knew two friends who had such domain names. But apart from that, I came across a very interesting website called chessforkids.us or something, or chessforkids.com with numeral 4 in the middle. And it had some very interesting instructional methods. And I'm looking closely at this website. It's two guys from Bellevue, Washington, and one of them was a friend of mine who I'd grown up with and hadn't talked to in 24 years. His name is Harlan Lee, and he and I were part of a group of about 7 kids who grew up in southern New Jersey in the 1970s. And we met playing in tournaments. We lived in nearby towns. We started hanging out together at chess clubs and going to tournaments together. And every time one of us had a breakthrough, we all just said, oh, that can be done. And it's like it was no big deal. We all just immediately followed with the same breakthrough and got up to the next level. And it was like somebody had made a wall disappear after the first person walked through it. So eventually, by our early 20s, all 7 of us had become chess masters.
Wow.
And I know that, to me, sounds very normal, that, you know, once you see a friend of yours do something, you think, oh, that can be done, and you do it. But the more I tell this story, the more I realize that there are not really a lot of groups around the country that have, you know, kind of grown up together like that and made progress just because, oh, my friends have done it, so it's no big deal. And anyway, in 1980, my girlfriend and I, now my wife, moved to California, to Southern California, to Pasadena. She got a job locating earthquakes at Caltech, and I was just at the borderline of 2200, and I had become involved in organizing tournaments and as well as playing, and I lost touch with my old friends. I hadn't seen them very often. I'd go back to the World Open and see them, but gradually just lost touch with them all. So here it was 2004, and there's an old friend. So I dropped them a note, and the next day we were on the phone, and it was like only a week had gone by, but it had been 24 years.
Exactly.
So Harlan had reached more than 2,400 as he continued playing. And in the mid-'80s, he'd moved to Arizona and pursued a master's degree in education with a focus on cognitive learning. And subsequently, he got a second master's degree in counseling because the learner was part of a complete person. And while he was doing this, somebody asked him to teach some elementary school kids how to play chess. So he began to teach them just basically using the methods he was learning in a graduate course on how to design math curriculum. And as he did this, he just slowly built up his own techniques for doing it. And within a few years, the National Scholastic Championships came to Arizona, and his kids started coming back with trophies as tall as they were. And more people asked him to teach. So on the side, he gradually did more and more teaching of chess to kids. And he started looking around for a curriculum. And he didn't find one. So he just started taking whatever worked from whatever places he found and fitting them together somewhat eclectically. And filling up notebooks with situations to place before his students. And over about 10 years, he trained up a lot of coaches in Arizona. And eventually, he got a job in Bellevue, Washington, at what was then Bellevue Community College. It's now a full 4-year college. And at the time I met him again, he was running the counseling department. But he had also, again, taken up teaching chess and teaching other people how to teach chess. And at some point, a parent of one of his students who was helping, who was a programmer, said, you know, we can take what's in your notebooks here and put it on a website. And he said, that would be cool. So this is the website that I came across. And they figured out an awful lot of great things. So at the time when I came across this, I thought, okay, this website is kind of, it's not really designed in a sophisticated way. It only worked with Internet Explorer and nothing else.
Was the process similar, though? The kinds of problems, etc.?
It was similar in terms of some of the kinds of problems, but it was linear. And if you didn't solve a problem, you couldn't go on to the next one. Okay. There were a whole variety of limitations, but in terms of starting out and building something, you have to go and start making it and learning what works and what doesn't, and iterating. Right. So it turns out that at the time that I encountered Harlan, he and his partner were kind of at their wits' end how to take it further. On the other hand, in those 24 years since I'd last seen Harlan, I had become very involved in working with programmers and in developing or helping to figure out what software should do. So in the 1980s, I had first helped the chess programmer Dave Kittinger, who wrote the original Chessmaster algorithm.
I can't get all that in. Okay. So just go on.
So through the 80s, I'd worked with a lot of programmers and into the 90s. And I had a whole raft of experience in this area. And I said to Harlan, hey, let me come up and help. So I went up to Seattle for a weekend, met Harlan and the developer of ChessForKids.com. And basically, they were kind of at a dead end, and they weren't really in agreement as to what to do next. And I introduced Harlan to Marty Hirsch, a programmer who had developed a program on his PC in the 80s to play chess. And in the 80s, he got it up to expert level. And in the 90s, way beyond expert level. In 1995, his program, M-Chess Pro, won the World Microcomputer Chess Championship. So along the way, he also worked in industry. He worked for NASA at Jet Propulsion Laboratories. He won an award for programming from NASA on the Voyager project. And basically, he's a really great programmer and a mathematical genius. So, here I am introducing these two guys and introducing, a variety of the kind of concepts that I could help with, because I both was a chess master like Harlan. I've taught, but not at Harlan's level. I've run software projects and developed things, but I'm not a programmer like Marty, much less a genius at programming.
But you brought the people together.
I brought them together, and then I helped to develop a lot of the additional ideas that made it work better for people, because I had many years' experience with that. And gradually we figured out how to build what became Chess Magnet School, and we shook hands and we did it.
Did you create a corporation with the 4 or 3 of you?
The 3 of us set up a company called Chess Magnet LLC as a limited liability corporation, and we're equal partners in it. And we just rolled up our sleeves and made it work. Mm-hmm. And, at this point...
Why the name Chess Magnet?
Yeah, naming it.
Yeah, that's always like, looking in the book for the kids, getting a name.
Yeah. Naming it was actually an interesting process.
You almost blushed when I asked that. That's very good.
How did we come to call it Chess Magnet? So the idea there was that eventually we'd have to figure out a name for it, we were getting fairly far along in making it, and we had a code name for the project. We called it Chess Booster, because you could boost your understanding of chess. But, it wasn't meant to be a name for the company. It was just a working name. And we were getting ready to go to Super Nationals in Nashville in 2005, and to start telling people that this was coming. Harlan was coaching there, and Marty and I went along, and we started sitting down with various coaches, so we needed business cards. And we tried every name under the sun. And somewhere along the line, the idea of playing off of the idea of a magnet school as a kind of a school that attracts across all geographic boundaries for a particular subject came to us. And the idea that, we're sort of a hub, for, chess learning. And, we just, sorry.
Nice to meet you here, yeah.
That was,
on the chair. Go ahead.
No, that was me on the table here.
Was it you on the table? All right, go ahead.
Okay, somewhere along the line we just came up with the idea of playing off of the term magnet school. So we basically thought of the website as being a magnet school for chess. And
Go ahead.
So we called the company Chess Magnet, and we called the service Chess Magnet School. And we put a .com at the end of it so that people would know that this was on the internet.
Why do you think your company took off? There were a lot of programs that were out there, during the years. Some of them on the online. You weren't necessarily the first one online, but yours certainly seems to have made it larger, from what I can tell and know, than some of the other programs that started out like Chess Mentor.
So before Chess Magnet School, there were really two companies that pioneered this kind of using a computer to let people solve chess problems, or chess puzzles as we call them. And the first one back in the 90s was called Chess Mentor. And, back then things came on floppy disks. And the folks who started Chess Mentor laid out a situation where you could try to ask lots of questions about what's going on in this position. And the authoring process was pretty laborious. And, having the student go around and turn over every rock, ask every kind of question about the position, was also kind of laborious. But, be that as it may, it was an advance on anything that existed at that time. And it was helpful, and a lot of good players authored for it.
I actually bought the first copy of it from Nixon.
Right.
Yeah, and it had a virus on the disc. Believe it or not, I was so embarrassed by it.
Ick.
He gave me the money back. But we're gone. And the other second company?
So the second company was Think Like a King.
Right. That's still around.
Dr. Stephen Lipschitz in Chicago created Think Like a King software, working with the really great chess teacher from New York, Dr. David McAnulty. Dr. David McAnulty? Really great chess teacher from New York, David McAnulty. I'm not sure, I don't think he is a doctor. But he's a great, great coach. Really great, in terms of helping kids to realize their potential and to feel comfortable trying and not to worry about, the risks and dangers of, losing a game.
That was one of the few that was on a Mac.
Right. So, in Think Like a King, kind of went beyond the material that Chess Mentor was able to present, and it presented things on a CD-ROM back then.
But very expensive comparatively, too.
Yeah, and it had its own limitations too. But once again, it moved forward into having a curriculum of chess puzzles that if you worked your way through them, you had demonstrated proficiency at a lot of things, and they had a variety of different courses. But there were 2 or 3 things that were major advances, I think, that we brought to this. The single biggest one might be the fact that we're internet-based. Right. Suddenly, you didn't have to install anything on your computer, and you could use it anywhere you could connect to the internet. And if you were working with a teacher or a coach, the teacher or coach could keep up with your progress. And if you moved from one class to another, your history moved with you. That's helpful for people with programs. It's not helpful for individuals. Another major piece of why Chess Magnet School works well is the fact that we built in the chess playing opponent to, when you try a move, it doesn't just say, yeah, that's the right move, now try the next one. And it doesn't say, that's the wrong move, try again. It plays a move against you. And after you play the next move, it plays the next move against you. And it gradually keeps track of whether you got it or not. If you have a mate in 3 or a win material in 2 moves type position, it basically lets you play until 2 or 3 moves have gone by, and then it says, okay, you achieved the goal, congratulations, or you didn't achieve the goal, would you like to try again? Let's try again. It might give you a hint. And in this way, if you started out wrong, you found out what the consequence of what you tried turned out to be, and then you got to try again and try to find a better path. I haven't seen any other program, even in all the years since we developed Chess Magnet School, that works like that. And I think that...
Well, how about the chesskids.com program that they've got out?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the details of critiquing it, but it doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't have an engine built in to play against you.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have presently? How many members do you have in the Chess Magnet School?
I don't actually keep up with the exact count, but, at any given time it's in the thousands, and, over the years, it's got to be way over 100,000 kids have used this.
Yeah, it's got to be more than a couple, thousand at this point.
Millions of puzzles have been done, and, as they've been done, you can kind of see people have really learned.
What was the year again that you, 2004 or 5?
Harlan and Marty and I shook hands on working together in late 2004. In 2005, we started to test it out with a coach Harlan had trained and a summer camp group. And in the fall, with 2 coaches that were working with school groups. And then at the beginning of 2006, we made it generally available and allowed people to start paying for it.
And when did you get involved with the U.S. Chess Federation and the Junior Grand Prix?
So I had been consulting for the USCF's executive director, Bill Hall, for a number of years before we launched Chess Magnet School. And I offered to him to provide a discount to USCF members. So we gave about a 10% discount to any USCF member for a year's subscription to the service. And after a few years, the Junior Grand Prix had come into existence, and its previous sponsor had left the scene, so I offered to sponsor it. And we provide a $1,000 stipend to the Junior Grand Prix winner to be able to participate in the U.S. Open, and we provide memberships in Chess Magnet School to about 100 winners, and our partner chesslecture.com also provides subscriptions to the 100 or so top winners around the country to be able to use the more advanced lectures that some of the better players in particular can take advantage of.
Now, obviously it's become a big enterprise in many ways, and maybe not, massive, but certainly there. Do you have other people working besides the 3 of you nowadays? Do you have a secretary? Who's doing all this, quote-unquote, paperwork, computer work?
The computer work is done by computers, and the computers have made it so that there's no paperwork. It's actually quite amazing.
Well, that was just,
Yeah. So as we've grown, What we've really done is we've put the power to look after students into the hands of teachers. And in the case of a program where there are multiple teachers, we've put the power into the hands of the program administrator. So, there are some schools and there are some programs that span multiple schools where all the kids are organized into classes with the appropriate teachers having the ability to look after their students in separate groups from one another. And it's really nice. It's kind of self-serve. The computer basically does the heavy lifting of keeping track of everybody, and people register themselves or they send in lists that we can read into the computer. And it's really great. This is the wonder of the internet age, that you don't have to keep having more people doing work.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's go back a little to your own background, okay? When did you start learning and playing chess?
So I grew up, I was born in Brooklyn and grew up in Queens, New York. And my father, who's an engineer, taught me how to play chess when I was 8 or 9. But living in New York City, there were enough kids on the block to play ball games.
Did you live in Manhattan proper?
No, I lived in an outlying borough of New York City. I grew up in Queens, New York. And,
yeah, you did say that.
Yeah. So living in Queens, New York.
What part of Queens? I'm going to stop you.
Oh, a small town called Laurelton in the southeastern corner of Queens.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought, maybe since I grew up there.
Oh, okay. Whereabouts?
Rosedale, right across the bay. But all my friends are Laurel.
Did they say right across the bay? It's like
I mean,
just
across,
a tiny bit,
right.
just across Merritt Boulevard.
Merritt Boulevard, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
So what street? I was
138.
Wow. So I lived at 139, 42, 231st Street.
Yeah, I could not go back. That's been a long time before you, but we were close to, was it Baisley Park? In the Rosedale area, across Merritt.
So I lived right near where Sunrise Highway branched off from Belt Parkway.
Okay.
And Francis Lewis Boulevard came down and turned and went out to.
Yeah, we got all this on the camera. I suppose it's not absolutely relevant. I got it, but it's interesting because I hadn't realized that.
You'll probably be cutting a lot.
We created the Mu Sigma, and I don't know if they was still there, high school fraternity in that area. And got into all kinds of trouble for it, but that's another story. And you said that your father was a Reform Jew?
Right.
Did they belong to the Reform Temple?
No, actually we belonged to a conservative synagogue.
My parents were involved in organizing and starting the Reform Temple in the area.
Oh, okay.
Just for whatever it's worth and out of the tape. Go, okay.
Yeah, I'd have to struggle to remember, names of things and rabbis and so on.
I know. But, visualizations there.
Okay, so circling back, my father taught me how to play chess when I was maybe 8 years old or 9 years old, but I only played with him when I was still a kid living in Queens, New York. There were enough kids outside to play entire ball games with, so chess never really became anything for, outside the home. When I was 11, almost 12, near the end of being in 6th grade, our family moved to southern New Jersey, to a town of about 14,000 called Mount Holly. Basically, people ask, well, where is that? And I say, well, it's exit 5 on the turnpike. Everything in New Jersey is identified.
Yeah, so you left Laurel when you were quite young.
Yeah. Right. So when I got to a new town and a new school, there was an activity hour and there was a chess club, and I knew how to play chess, so I joined the chess club. And I started to make friends that way. And gradually, a few of us discovered our first chess books. And I think our first chess books were a Horowitz book on basic chess endings. It wasn't called Basic Chess Endings. What was it called? I don't remember.
No, it's obviously.
Okay. So my friends and I discovered a very elementary endgame book by I.A. Horowitz, and we discovered a book called Paul Morphy and the Golden Age of Chess by Napier. And it was really cool. It was full of all kinds of neat little short games and interesting stories. And we discovered things like the Evans Gambit. And we fell in love with gambits, especially the Evans Gambit.
Shorman would love this.
And, so as little kids, we played and we analyzed, and I probably have some old papers somewhere, where we wrote all these things out. And in the spring of 1972, in our last year in junior high school, one of my friends came home and said, "My mom found a copy of this chess magazine in the county library." It was a copy of Chess Life magazine. And we looked at it, and we discovered, wow, there are these things called chess tournaments. And 3 of us managed to convince our parents to let us go to a chess tournament in New York City, 90 miles up the New Jersey Turnpike by bus. And in summer of 72, as Bobby Fischer was playing Boris Spassky in Iceland, we intrepidly convinced our parents to put us on the bus, and we stopped at every payphone as we went by to call and tell them we were still alive. And we played in a Bill Goichberg organized chess tournament at the McAlpine Hotel in New York City. And I think it was a junior tournament with 12 rounds or 11 rounds. Maybe it was 11 rounds in 3 days. And I think I got like 2 points out of 11. And I got an initial rating of 1101. And then, it was September and high school started. And Fischer had just won the world championship, and the orchestra teacher at the high school had been a tournament player. So suddenly a bunch of kids came into the high school who were all interested in chess tournaments, and this teacher, Enea Caravaci, decided he would start playing chess with us. And after a while, he offered to start taking us on weekends to chess tournaments. And a couple of us started going with him, and I started meeting kids from nearby towns. And there was a chess league in southern New Jersey for high schools. And I remember one day I'm playing top board for my high school, and this kid who's 2 or 3 years older than me, playing top board for his high school, just absolutely crushes me. And after the game, he asks if I have a rating, and I said yes. And he said, "What is it?" And I said, "It's 1101, but it's going up." And he said, "Yes, what's it going to be?" And I said, 1170. Well, this fellow, later on, is, the most senior of the group of 7 of us who all hung out together and made progress together, and the most advanced of us. And when we were both chess masters years later, he always enjoyed retelling that story.
When did you get your chess master?
I achieved my first master's rating probably in 1980. Yeah, definitely in 1980.
Before you came to California?
It was right around the time I came to California. I played in some tournaments in early 1980 in Philadelphia, and I had one really incredible tournament. It was a CCA tournament at the Ben Franklin Hotel, and I won a game against a very strong international master named Bruce Rhine by just simply starting this massive kingside attack. And he was doing whatever it was on the queen side, and okay, my attack worked, and I beat him. And then I played Hikaru Nakamura's father, Sunil Weermantree, and he was in the 2300s at the time, and I beat him also. And I guess that tournament must be what put me over 2200.
I'll have to speak to Sunil next time I see him. Double check if he remembers that.
It's a lot of years since then, and I was terrified of Sunil. Because he like my friend who had played top board for his high school that first time, Doug Brown, they were both older, they were both higher rated, and I just thought, Sunil was just this incredible player, which he was. He was, I think at times over 2400, and he was a fierce attacking player. and he had all of these attacking systems that he understood really well, and sometimes he beat grandmasters with them. So I actually sat back and played a hedgehog because I knew Sunil was prone to thinking and thinking and thinking until he was in terrible time pressure. So he got into terrible time pressure, and he won a pawn, but I castled the other way and counterattacked and eventually got him. So I think I was kind of pretty fortunate. It was sort of like jujitsu. You know, all of his energy was spent in the game, and I just got lucky.
You stopped playing competitive chess then at about 11 years later, because your rating on the U.S. Chess Federation stops in 1991.
No, I was 20. It was from 72 to... 11 years after I became a master,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, after you became a master.
Right, okay.
So the question, I pose is basically, why did you stop playing in tournaments?
Okay, so ask the question again.
Why did you stop playing in tournaments in 1991 after you, 11 years after you got the master?
Okay. Great question. I think about it myself sometimes. What happened was, I had started playing in tournaments in 1972 when I was 14 years old, and I probably had the highest level of activity and the lowest rate of progress of just about any really active player. But I just kept playing and I kept making progress. So at some point when I moved to LA, I was just reaching the point where I'd go over 2200, but I wasn't secure there. And I was invited to play in a candidate master or expert group at the main chess club in LA, the chess set. And it was a round robin on Friday nights, and I won it. So that got me an invite to the masters group, and it was just wonderful to play in Lena Grumet's club, which was her home, under this beautiful portrait of Bobby Fischer in a place where he'd lived, against all the masters from throughout LA on Sunday afternoons. And I played there for about 10 years, from the early 80s to 1990, at which point Lena, at age 80, passed away. And that was sort of the end of the chess set. And along the 10-year span that I was playing there, I got involved in organizing a lot of the chess tournaments in LA. So, for probably 5 of those 10 years, I ran the big American Open tournament and the Memorial Day tournament and so on. And I played on weekends sometimes, but I often ran tournaments on weekends. So I helped organize and played in other master-level round robins, sometimes Friday nights in Pasadena at the Pasadena Chess Club, sometimes at LeBates Chess Center down in first Downey and then later in Anaheim. And I got very used to these wonderful environments in which I'm playing a game at 40 moves in 2 hours or 40 moves in 2.5 hours against another master, 1 game each week, and I could prepare for the game. I could put my full energy into it. I could do a nice post-mortem with the opponent afterwards and really try to learn as much as I could every game. And that was really enjoyable for me. And in 1992, I took a job for Electronic Arts, the game company that makes John Madden football and quite a lot of other games, and moved from Southern California to Northern California to take charge of a project where they were making a chess game with Gary Kasparov to compete with the Chessmaster program. And I immersed myself in playing, in working on this chess program. And I looked around to see if there were any tournaments like these master round robins that I'd played in Southern California, and I didn't find any. Also, this was the time when sudden death time controls were coming into existence, and it used to be that you reached 40 moves and you got another hour, and you could play another 16 or 20 moves, and if you played all of those, you got another hour. And if you ran out of time to play the game, you wrote down your move, and it was put into a sealed envelope, and the game was resumed days later or a week later. But you could continue to try to pursue the end game and to figure out and solve problems that, you know, were still new for you or took a lot of work. And the whole idea of sudden death, you know, kind of made a lot of that in-game work go away. And to me, that kind of took away some of the learning process that I knew still lay ahead for me if I was going to make progress at chess. So the combination of not finding master level round robins, the changing of the, you know, of going away of long end games and moving toward sudden death, and the fact that I was working on this chess computer program with Kasparov, you know, which took an awful lot of my time for the next year, kind of left me, you know, not really looking for chess tournaments in Northern California. And then there was another thing too, which is a couple years before I moved from Southern to Northern California, I had been with one of my chess buddies who is an avid hiker, and I thought of him as my and my wife's personal guide to the Sierra, because we go hiking in the Sierra Nevada mountains with him, a fellow named Alan Fifield in Visalia.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know Alan very well. I didn't realize that. Your connection with Alan, that's interesting.
And one weekend, you know, my wife and I had gone up to his home and gone hiking on Saturday in Sequoia National Park with Alan. And that night, he had a bunch of friends over, and he announced, "Surprise, everybody, it's my birthday." Well, Alan was just turning 40, I was 30, and I was listening to him and his friends discuss their wonderful experiences backpacking in the High Sierra, and I thought, I'd like to build up and be able to go backpacking. I was an avid day hiker. Kathy and I would climb, you know, 5,000 and 10,000 foot mountains in the mountains north of Pasadena, the Sierra Madre Mountains. And we go cross-country skiing in Mount Pinos, north of LA, and we go up to Sequoia. But, you know, backpacking, that seemed like a whole nother level. So back in Pasadena, I looked for a way to get exercise and build up to go backpacking. And there was an ice skating rink. Well, I grew up a big fan of ice hockey, but I'd never ice skated in my life, maybe twice as a kid. So I found out there was a lunchtime class every Wednesday for adults to learn how to ice skate. So I went, and I bought a pair of hockey skates, and the instructor carefully, you know, made sure that, unlike all the people wearing figure skates, I learned how to stop in hockey skates, and you know, a few other things I would need to know. And then summer came around, and the kids took over the ice rink, and the adult class went away. And I found out there was a hockey kind of boot camp on Monday nights that was part of the youth program, but adults could participate. So I started going. I rustled up some gear, and with about a dozen other adults and 50 or more kids, you know, went out on the ice. And this Canadian guy who was an illustrator for the movie studios in Burbank put everybody through their paces like a Marine drill sergeant. And he told all the kids, you know, if it can happen to you in a game, I want you to feel like it's no big deal because it's already happened to you here at Jack White's hockey clinic. And I remember there was a little boy and a little girl who would come all the time, and the little boy was barely up to the top of the goal as a goaltender. He was so small. But his sister, at the age where girls have developed more quickly than boys and are bigger than boys sometimes, was captain of her team, and they won a state championship. And I remember, you know, the coach told everybody, I want every one of you to be a player, a captain, and a coach. And this girl, 10 years later, I turn on the television, and there she was playing defense for the U.S. Women's Olympic team in Nagano, Japan, winning a gold medal, and 3 Olympics later, captain of the team in Vancouver. And this coach had basically opened the door, you know, to these kids and held the door open wide for them to go as far as they could. And he did that for me too, in my much lesser way. So,
okay, well, you've continued with it even to an age that most people probably couldn't even skate on the ice. As I look around here, well, I guess the question I've got, it's not really a question. It seems that in a sense you may have given up chess because of your love for hockey. I look around here and you've got a lot of hockey sticks, but I don't see any chess sets. Is there one hiding over there somewhere?
Oh, there are chess sets all over here.
I was wondering where they are. Oh, okay. They're just not out.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, and
I
there's a
feel
bunch of
better.
them back
I
there.
feel better. Okay.
Oh,
that's
they're
good.
all over here.
Yeah.
I'll produce 4 or
So,
5
so
for you
you
quickly.
definitely didn't give up chess for hockey. No, I know that.
And I would say that chess books outnumber hockey books on these shelves by at least 100.
So chess
to
is
1.
still your
You can see
favorite avocation.
You can see a lot of chess books if you
In
look
fact.
at the lower shelves.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
So chess. So we understood how chess became, in your background and your development, almost became a vocation. In fact, it did, I suspect, can become a vocation if you want to.
It did.
Circuit Chess Magnet School. There was a question I wanted to ask in there on a different level, so maybe I'll just.
Actually, I have something interesting to say about the chess and
Yeah.
hockey.
Yeah, that's
So-
one of my questions. Was actually going to ask you, how do you compare chess and hockey? What are the connections?
Well, first, going back to a question that you started to ask about, how long I've played hockey now. I learned to skate when I was 30, and I've been playing for about 25 or 26 years now. And as far as it being a potentially lifelong thing, about 10 years ago I played in Santa Rosa at an ice rink that had been owned by the creator of Snoopy, Charles Schultz. And
Really?
and Charles Schultz in 1975 founded a senior tournament called the Snoopy Tournament, famous worldwide. And for 10 days in July every summer, teams compete in an over 40 bracket, an over 45, an over 50, all the way up to over 70. And some years 75 and over.
Wow.
And there's no checking, there's no slap shots, but it's just huge fun, and people come from all over. People who played together at the University of Michigan, many decades ago under a real coach, some of whom went on and played in the NHL.
It's still at it.
Guys come down from Calgary. It's amazing to watch. And, I've seen people in their 70s, 80s. I think there's even somebody in his 90s who still plays. You just have to, as long as you don't, suffer a serious injury, get a limb bent the wrong way permanently, you can keep playing. But, so hockey replaced, I think, for me, the competitive
Gotcha.
component that I enjoy from chess. And hockey gave me an opportunity to be a beginner again, whereas, at the master level of chess, you can continue to progress, but it's a lot of work, it's ever more sophisticated.
I like that line.
And hockey also gave me something else that chess doesn't provide, except, in the U.S. Amateur Team Championship, perhaps, or in a league, which is the chance to be part of a team. Suddenly you show up and you've got teammates.
Yeah.
People who will basically put themselves out for you, and you put yourselves out for them, and there's this great camaraderie.
And you had that as a youth with the 7 samurai, or whatever you want to call it.
Right. Yes. I guess we were like seven samurai, like Ronin. No sponsor, just.
What got you to move to Half Moon Bay? I'm just curious. It's a little aside.
Oh, okay. So in New York, my mother grew up in Coney Island, and her mother had an apartment. My grandmother on my mother's side had an apartment overlooking the boardwalk, and I used to spend summer weekends there. So I always loved being next to the ocean. So when I had the opportunity to come up here to work for Electronic Arts in San Mateo, I already was familiar with the fact that Half Moon Bay was this beautiful place. And it also had my initials, my middle initial being M.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah, the first time I came through Half Moon Bay was 1989, and we came over Highway 92, and we dropped down into fields of pumpkins, and all the trinkets in town had my initials on them.
I think I may start with that one in the answer to the question. I moved to Half Moon Bay because it had my initials.
Yeah, how often are you going to get an opportunity
You
like
see your
that?
name all over the place, or at least your initials.
I feel at home here.
Did you know Eric Schiller at the time?
Yes. So when I was playing chess in the late 70s in New York, Eric and I met one another and became friends. And in 1980, I moved to California. He went off to Chicago to graduate school. He earned a PhD in linguistics at the University of Chicago. You know, he's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And, I mean, here's this guy who's written over 100 chess books. He's taught many, many kids who've gone on to do very well as players, you know, all the way up to, like, Vinay Bhatt. And he's conducted orchestras. He's got this PhD in linguistics from a top school. And, you know, he's about the fastest reading comprehension, you know, of anybody I've ever seen. Just a wonderful, wonderful intellect and a wonderful person.
Was he living here when you moved into that?
No, Eric had introduced me to Gary Kasparov back in 1989. Okay, I should say that again. Just figuring it out on your camera. So, having met Eric in the late 70s, when I came to California, I was kind of carrying some ideas he and I discussed, and I actually helped launch some chess publications, in part based on some of the suggestions that Eric had made. And Eric came out here in 1983 when I was organizing an attempt to have a candidates match along with the 1983 U.S. Open in Pasadena. And that summer he organized the World Student Team Olympiad. And that year Kasparov played in it. And as he was studying Russian and could translate for Kasparov, they gradually became friends. And Eric was research editor for Batsford Chess Openings, which Kasparov did a lot of the work on, along with Ray Keane. Eric was the research editor for that book. And a few years ago, I was helping clear out some things from Eric's library, and I actually came across a spiral-bound collection of about 300 handwritten pages in Gary Kasparov's hand in Cyrillic that show that he actually wrote a lot of that book, longhand, working with Eric and Keane. In any case, somewhere around 1989, Eric called me up and came out to L.A. and said, you know, Gary's going to be in L.A. and, you know, I want to come out and see him. So I went along and was introduced to the world champion. And later on, you know, spent time with Eric and Gary when Gary was training in Malibu for 6 weeks in the early 90s. And then, you know, worked with Gary again when I was helping Electronic Arts with producing the game Kasparov's Gambit. And at that time, Eric had finished his PhD in Chicago, so I invited Eric to come out to California to help prepare some of the supporting chess material for Kasparov's Gambit. And that's why he also moved to California.
Oh, okay. So you were out here before he was. See, I came in later, so.
Yeah, I actually caused him to move here.
Ah. But and he moved into Half Moon Bay.
He moved to El Granada, about 4 miles north of Half Moon Bay.
Oh, but he was in this area here.
Yeah.
Ah, because I always thought of him living in Half Moon Bay. I want to move on to one. I don't know. Hopefully, I don't insult you with my question.
That's right.
When I first met you, you reminded me, and to some extent maybe still do in my bias, of a Los Angeles pitchman. You were constantly pitching ideas and thoughts and selling them. Okay, it's a part of your personality, I think, that you were pitching. Why do you feel the need to push and pitch chess? Chess idea. That's where I'm going with it. Right?
Oh, okay. So the question you want to ask me, I think,
well, basically, is what makes you.
What is it about chess that gets me so excited?
It gets you excited,
and that I constantly want to
have this need, in a sense, to proselytize, to pitch it, to work with it the way you do. In fact, I think, although there are some people who are that way, Yours is unique, and it generally doesn't ever say to me, this guy's trying to make money out of it. There seems to be a love there in that pitching.
Right.
Okay, and that's pretty much where I was going. And so what do you think it is in you that has brought out that pitch man?
Right. Ah, that's a great question. By the way, there's another question I wanted to come back to also.
Okay.
Which is, giving up chess for hockey.
Okay.
Because I know something happened that made me realize that I would play chess competitively again someday if I couldn't play hockey again. I could talk to that.
Okay, well, remember, we got to go to lunch, dinner sometime, so I don't want to keep you...
Right, okay. What is it about chess that makes me want to contribute to it, to share it, to stay involved with it?
Yeah, mine was more direct. What makes you a pitchman for it? Yes.
Okay. Why am I always busy urging people to play
Do something,
chess?
and not just play it,
Right.
but involve themselves
Right.
with ideas.
Right. I think somewhere in me I have that organizer gene. So.
Yeah, but there are organizer genes out there. I mean, Solomon has an organizer gene. I have an organizer gene.
Right.
But you seem to go beyond it.
Somewhere along the line, I developed this feeling that chess could be more than it is. And I think that might be because, I grew up at that moment when Bobby Fischer was just becoming world champion. And, it was just inspiring. Here was this genius who just made chess look simple. And as me and my friends got into it, we had a tremendous amount of fun, and we got good at it. And while I was getting good at it, I discovered that it helped me in life because when it came time to take the PSAT and SAT tests in high school, it was just like I was playing a chess tournament game. There were so many questions to answer, there was so much time. You had to, figure out whether to spend your time on this question or that question, or make your best guess and move on so you don't let your flag fall. And I won a National Merit Scholarship, and I hadn't done any of the kind of test preparation things that people do nowadays. They may not have even existed back then. And so part of it was, just really enjoyed it. Part of it was that I met really neat people through it. Part of it was that it seemed to make me able to do things by applying the kind of methods that I learned, to be able to play chess well. And I just, I think I started out in life figuring, okay, I'll be an engineer. And I started to study physics, and I worked in an engineering place. And then I started to realize, hey, these people, they don't all seem to be having as much fun as I thought I should be having if I was going to be an engineer. And when my wife got a job that she liked that took us to California, I had the opportunity suddenly to spend my 20s just doing everything with chess that barely earned a living and not to really have to worry about it until finally things fell into place. And in the course of that, I just came into contact with, business kind of things like working with hotels as I organized chess tournaments, working with companies that made computers that played chess, working with programmers who program them, working with people who wanted to learn to play chess better by giving them lessons, writing a column for a newspaper. At first I wrote articles for Chess Life about the tournaments I organized. Then I went to a World Computer Chess Championship tournament, and I wrote a cover story for Chess Life in 1983 about that. At some point, a friend of mine was writing a column every Sunday for the Orange County Register, which is the fourth largest paper in California. It's south of Los Angeles in Orange County, which is sort of like the relationship between San Jose and the Mercury News to San Francisco. And one day he came to me and he said, "Hal, would you like to take over my column? I don't have anything left to say." And he took me down there after I wrote a sample column and introduced me and said, here's your new chess columnist. And for the next 3 years, every week I had to analyze 2 chess games for the public and put in a chess puzzle for people to solve, and write 15 column inches to kind of share the culture of chess with my readers, who were, by and large not going to be tournament players. And, this newspaper had a circulation on Sunday of more than 1 million copies. So it just felt like, my job was to share, what it was like to be involved with chess, to explain and present the personalities of, the leading American players and the leading players in the world. And it just seemed like every part of chess that I got involved with, no matter how many different kinds of things were involved in it, was fun. And after a while, it's like, hey, I love doing this.
And so you love pitching it to other people so they can have fun. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed to me like if you can play chess in tournaments on weekends and then come back to school and just, succeed in school simply because you had become decent at playing chess and you solve problems well, and then you go out into the world and you make all kinds of friends who do lots of different things because they all share your interest in chess and they show up at chess tournaments, and you play against them. But chess is a highly social activity, which it's not obvious to non-chess players that that's the case. You go somewhere and you silently sit there and you beat your brains against your opponent's brains and quiet, and then afterwards suddenly you go off to the next room and you, out of earshot of the people who are still playing their tournament games, ask the other person, what would you have done if I did this? I was thinking of this move, but I couldn't quite figure out, whether this worked. And, 100 other questions. And suddenly you're on this shared voyage of discovery with this person who was your opponent just a few minutes ago. And it becomes a shared learning experience. And you start to appreciate how this other person thinks. And, you're both trying to find the truth, right? To find, what should we have done? Who was winning? What's the right move to play? And, I mean, back in the Middle Ages, I suppose, universities like Oxford and such, formed so that people could go and start to kind of figure out, what's the meaning of everything. And here we are in chess, just learning to do it just by playing this simple little game with each other and then discussing it. And
you want others to share that and spread it.
I guess I'm just sharing my enthusiasm for it.
By pitching it to others and having to see if they can share that enthusiasm.
Yeah, and then, there's a second part to it. Maybe there's several more parts to it. When I arrived in L.A., I had already been involved with my, buddy who I played in that first high school match in running chess tournaments in New Jersey. I had, been a director at the World Open. I showed up in L.A. and there were plenty of weekend tournaments. I started playing in weekend tournaments, and I started playing in those, that expert round robin and then the master round robin. And the first master round robin I played in was a massive tournament. There were 16 people in it, and 6 of them were senior masters. And then the rest of us were like just, a rung or two below them. And I thought, wow, these 6 guys, they just have to beat the rest of us like rabbits, racing with each other to keep up. And at the end of the tournament, I think the top finishers, the winner scored like 14-1, and then second place scored 13-2. Then the next place was like 12.5, 2.5, and scores like that. And then there was like one guy who was maybe about 2,300 who scored 9-7, and all the rest of us had these horrible minus scores. I had played the top 6, the senior masters, in the first 9 games out of the 15. And after 9 games, I had like, I think 3 draws and 6 losses. I'd never had, in a Swiss you never have a result like that. And, after those 9 rounds, I still had 5 or 6 more games, and 6 more games, but they were all against, like, people who were in my class, and I ended up with a respectable score. But at the end of the tournament, I said to these guys, wow, this is great, me playing you, but I don't see what you're getting from playing me. Well, a couple of those guys were international masters, but 3 of them, local LA senior masters, were good enough to be international masters, but there were no tournaments at that level where you could earn a title norm back in 1980, 81.
Up here as well.
And, here this friend of mine, Eric Schiller, had organized Grandmaster tournaments as well as international master tournaments back in New York at the Marshall Chess Club.
Oh, okay.
And there was a foundation back in those days called the American Chess Foundation, which was founded decades and decades ago. And I think Marcel Duchamp, a very famous artist, was a huge chess player. And he created some art that they could sell off to help raise money for their foundation. And they helped a lot of chess players over the years. And at that time, they had a matching grant program in which if you could raise half the money locally to organize a tournament that would give Americans a chance to earn a title, they'd match it and put up the other half. So Eric introduced me to the people around the foundation and helped me plan it all out. And I found a couple of local folks in LA who said that they would help. And the three senior masters who I said were wasting their time playing me, basically helped defray my initial expenses while I tried to see if I could get this organized. And in spring 1981, right after the very last Lone Pine tournament, we held a 12-player international master norm round robin in LA at the chess set. And it was the first of 4 such tournaments that I organized in the early 80s. And there were a whole bunch of players who were international masters and grandmasters today who played in those tournaments before they had reached those levels. And some of them earned their titles through those tournaments. Some of them just got better and earned their titles later.
That leads me on to, cut at some of it. The last question, and then you want to go back to the hospital.
Actually, I want to say something important on that and just finish it.
Okay.
And what I figured out while that was going on was I was learning so much watching these players who were better than me play each other and then go over the games afterwards. And for me, chess is this wonderful voyage of discovery and improving yourself, improving myself, learning more. And I figured out, I think I could become an international master. But if I do, okay, the world will have one more international master. What difference will that make, right? But maybe one of these guys can become a grandmaster, maybe even a world champion. Maybe there's some kid, who's coming up. And by creating this path, somebody who has that potential will be able to achieve it. And that became, I think, my motivator. The fact that, I have the ability to enable people to do more.
Okay. It's a good, so in other words, you feel yourself an enabler.
Yeah.
Rather than necessarily a pitchman per se.
Yeah.
It's the enabling that makes you pitch it.
Yeah, I think, the potential of human beings is great. And every one of us is able to do all kinds of things, regardless of, whether they seem minor or major in the greater scheme of things. And, I think everyone has that some kind of gift, some kind of thing that they can do that makes the world a better place, makes people around them happier, makes themselves happy, and is productive and contributes to society. And over the years, I've seen this in different fields, like seeing that girl go on to become an Olympic gold medalist. And she was just a kid training under the same coach who, as an adult, taught me to play hockey.
Inspired.
And, since then, chess has brought me into contact with amazing people, including astronauts. And at some point, having assisted astronauts in playing chess against the public from space, something which Bill Hall, the executive director of the U.S. Chess Federation, gave me an opportunity to assist with, I became friends with these guys. I discovered that they had the same kind of joy, in encouraging others to achieve, to basically, live out, and fulfill their dreams. And, okay, those dreams are much greater, than any dream I've ever had and lived out. I'm not going to become world chess champion. I'm not going to become an astronaut. I'm not going to play in the Stanley Cup finals and hoist the cup. But, becoming involved in helping kids to learn chess and better themselves, helping kids to learn to program computers and go on to, help support, mankind, sending missions to Mars and beyond. These kinds of things, I think after a while, as you grow up and reach the limits of what you're going to achieve, to enrich yourself, you start to realize that if you can help the next generation to achieve more, then, you've really made a difference in the world. And, getting involved in this robotics programming competition that culminates on the space station, which Greg Shamatov, who I started helping to play chess when he was on the space station in 2008, invited me to assist with. I've gone out to MIT and seen these high school kids from all over the country who have programmed these little flying robots on the space station, and they come and they hang out with astronauts, they hang out with MIT scientists, and they watch the guys and women also on the space station run the programs they've written, and they come to realize, like, I can go to a place like MIT or Stanford or Berkeley, I can become an astronaut, or I can, build things, like Teslas, or things like that, and I can really do everything that's in me, and I can make the world a better place, or explore, or do new things that are cool and fun.
Okay, I lied. I'm going to ask you two questions. The plaque behind you. Why don't you tell us a little about that, since you brought up NASA? What is it and why is it?
So in 2008, Bill Hall asked me if the USCF could host on our website, which I had helped them develop, a game between an astronaut on the space station and the public. And I told him, well, if you mean, can we have a poll and people vote on which move to play, and then tell NASA, okay, this is the public's move, and then they tell their astronaut, and he sends back his move, and then repeat the process? Sure. But I had seen a newspaper article showing this guy floating in space while his chess set on the table in front of him didn't float, which I thought was magnets, but it turned out it was Velcro. And I said, this guy's not a tournament player. He's been playing against ground control personnel, and here's this cool article. But Kasparov played against the public online back in the late 90s, sponsored by Microsoft, and grandmasters worked against him, and people used computers 24 hours a day to try to beat him. And he had the fight of his life for 6 months. So Bill Hall suggested that perhaps the involvement of kids would help. And the national K-3 elementary school champion team from Stevenson Elementary School in Bellevue, Washington, which my partner in chess magnet school, Harlan Lee, had coached.
Did he actually? Okay.
He did.
Yeah.
So my partner had coached these kids, and even though this was the end of the summer, we were able to get in touch with them easily. None of them was rated higher than 1,500. So it was
Washington rating or USCF?
USCF.
Oh, okay.
And they had won the K3 championship.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything, because we had a bunch of 1,500s Washington rated playing in the under 1,000
Right.
or under 900, whatever it was at the Nationals this year.
No, they you know, once you reach a certain...
There's a different rating.
Yeah, but once you reach a certain point, you know, you're competing against kids from all over the country, and your rating gets normalized.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Anyway,
No, no.
these
Very
are...
seldom seen.
Okay.
Anyway.
You can look at the USCF rating list, and you can see that there are masters who are high school kids, there are masters who are junior high school kids, but back in 2008, there were no masters in elementary school anywhere in the country. Today, maybe there are.
2008?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking of both Vinay and Jordi Montrino were both masters in elementary school, but they were earlier.
Right, okay. Anyway, at that time, here were these kids who were class players, and by letting them come up with the move choices that the public could vote on, we were making sure that grandmasters and computers weren't controlling the game. So, you know, so pretty soon I was handling all of this between USCF and NASA, and then Greg Shamatov, the astronaut, came back from space, and I started communicating directly with him. And USCF invited him to Super Nationals in 2009, where he and Kasparov gave the keynote talks from the stage of the Grand Ole Opry at the opening ceremony. And then Greg came out to Seattle and spent a day with the kids at the Museum of Flight, where they have a full-size replica of a module of the space station, which he just brought to life around them. And Greg and I became friends, and sometime after that, he sent me this great note, said, "I've got another space flight coming. It'll be a shorter trip. It'll just be a shuttle mission. It won't be 6 months on the space station again, but I'll get to do spacewalks." And then some while later, he wrote back and said, "Can you help find some item from the chess community that I can fly in space and then return for display? There are rules. It can't be, you know, for commercial use. It can't be sold." So I had gone to the chess club in St. Louis, which really impressed me, and I knew that the Hall of Fame was going to be opening there. So I contacted them, and they came up with a wonderful item in terms of not weighing very much. It cost about $20,000 a pound to take weight up to the space station, 200 miles up on the space shuttle. And they produced a vinyl roll-up chessboard that had been autographed by all of the players in the U.S. Championship that year. And arrangements were made to send this to NASA and pack it away on the space shuttle. And as the time got closer, I got this wonderful note from Greg, "Hey, I've got you an invitation to the launch. Can you come?" I'm like, "Well, how can I not come? But my wife and my father are going to be very jealous." And he said, "Well, certainly your wife's invited." So off we went to Florida.
Not your father?
my father is still jealous. Every day of my life, when the sky is clear enough, my father or my wife have been pointing up at the stars saying, "Do you know the name of this one? Do you know the name of that one?" So for it to be me that got this invitation to something which I never thought I would see,
Gotcha.
you know, was just amazing. So as it got closer, he said, "You know, the pilot of the shuttle, one of my crewmates, also plays chess. Maybe we can do another game, but it'll have to be faster. It'll have to end when we land. The game stops at wheel stop. You know, basically, when we're coming back, just put the game up to a vote by the members of the public who've been playing, and let them vote on the result," right? So as it got closer, I helped with that, and every day exchanged several emails back and forth with Greg Johnson and Greg Shamatov, and who I now know as Taz and Box. Greg Shamatov having been a professor in Australia, and Greg Johnson having had his things stored by his Air Force flight crew in a box when he was injured once, and having it moved around until they finally said, "Oh, put Box here, put Box there," and became friends with the second astronaut, who not just loves chess, but also is a master level bridge player, and who goes out to youth tournaments and promotes bridge, just like Bill Gates does, as a beneficial activity for kids that helps them with their decision making and other challenges later in life, just as we tell people chess does. the bridge people have a slightly different explanation because, bridge is not a game of complete information, so they say sometimes you have to make a decision without full information. Bridge teaches you how to make good inferences. Anyway, what I learned with these two guys is, they have this huge passion for games. They have this huge passion for inspiring kids. This huge passion for going out and conquering space and tons of things along the way that you have to be able to be good at doing to be able to do that. And in the course of helping them with these activities, one day Taz sent me a note and said, need your address. And then this absolutely amazing thing came in the mail in the largest envelope I've ever seen. And it's just a thank you for having helped with them being able to play chess as a recreational activity, so that they could have a little fun while they were working so hard most of the time in space.
Great. Okay, the last question. You organized, you were active in Southern California. When you got to Northern California, to the best of my knowledge, you haven't put on any tournaments, you haven't been organized, you haven't really been working them. Why the change?
So when I arrived in Southern California in 1980, I had directed tournaments back east. I started at my chess club because they needed some help. And then I captained a team in the South Jersey Chess League when I got my driver's license, and we could drive around to clubs and play the Sunday matches. And eventually directed a section of the World Open in 1979. And I arrived in 1980 in LA, and the tournaments were not run with the kind of efficiency of a Bill Goichberg CCA tournament. And, I just started, helping, with running tournaments, and I started organizing, the master level events. And, at some point, I think I was the #3 tournament organizer in the country behind the organizers of the World Open and the New York Open. Maybe the folks who run the National Open would say it was #4, but, that's neither here nor there. When I came up to Northern California in 1992, I'd already had, the entire experience of serving on first the New Jersey State Chapter Board and then the Southern California Board. In Southern California, I pretty much held all the different offices up through president. And, it's sort of like the politics of chess is something totally apart from the playing and such. And after a while, people just, I think, get a little too wrapped up in it. So, everybody wants to be in charge. Some people are doing it because they want things to work better, and other people are doing it because they want to be important. And, at some point I found myself defending the organization, and I realized, I actually just want things to work well. And if I'm helping other people work well, if other people are doing a great job of it, then, that's great. I can sit back and just play or just do my other parts, the parts that I'm good at. And when I arrived here in 1992, Northern California had this great tournament scene. Tom Dorsch and Mike Goodall and Ted Udakovsky and more other people than I can name. We're already running the People's Tournament and the Lyra tournament in Sunnyvale at Thanksgiving, and the U.S. Open had been up here, and then Bill Goichberg brought the U.S. Open here again. And I didn't see any need to kind of jump in. There were no gaps that needed to be filled. My enjoyment at competing was coming from ice hockey. My involvement with chess had moved to, working on Kasparov's Gambit for Electronic Arts, then working on online play for Imagination Network, and then the Internet Chess Club, which I ended up running in 2002, 2003 for its owners. And then, on to education and building Chess Magnet School. And it just never seemed to me that, this was an area where help was needed. I mean, even today, some of the biggest state scholastic chess championships in the country are the Northern California ones. So, I'm just really happy to watch it. And if there was ever a need to help somewhere, I'd be glad to help out in some way. But there's no point displacing people who are doing a great job or divvying up the roles. So and as to the politics of chess, I didn't need any kind of glory or anything. I've always done this really to my own standard. And maybe it sounds funny to say, but as long as I felt like I was doing things that I thought were helping and being effective, then I was happy. And I didn't need to get into it with anybody. So I dropped by a few meetings and I saw that this place is much better organized.
The Cal Chess meetings.
Yeah, I dropped by some Cal Chess meetings and I saw that the organization up here was more effective than when I arrived in Southern California. It had been down there, and it was as effective as it was in New Jersey, where I learned the ropes myself.
This was in the 90s?
In New Jersey, it was in
the
late 70s.
I'm talking about in Northern California.
Yeah, the organization of Cal Chess, when I arrived here in Northern California in 92, seemed to be really excellent. And I had played in Northern California in the U.S. Open in Palo Alto in 1981, and in the Cal Chess Masters Opens at Berkeley in 1981 and 83. And, they were wonderful tournaments to play in, and a lot of the same people were still doing things, plus new people. And, in fact, it's kind of funny. When I showed up to look for a place to live so that I could relocate to the San Francisco area for electronic arts, I came up on Labor Day weekend. My wife and I had the 3-day weekend to look for a place to live, and then I would start work on Tuesday morning. And I checked into a hotel that the company had arranged for me very near their offices in San Mateo, on El Camino Boulevard in San Mateo. And I checked in and grabbed my bags and got in the elevator, and a chess player looked at me and said, "You're playing in the tournament?" I'm like, "What tournament?" I had been placed in the hotel where the Northern California State Championship, the Cal Chess Labor Day Open Championship, was being held. It was kind of funny.
Hal, thank you. It's time to go eat.
Good. By the way, if people ask me what I do, I tell them I talk too much.
You talk too much? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
You know what it's like in life. You walk around and you meet people, and they ask you, what do you do? Right?
My job is talking too much. Right?
So I now have a one-line answer that I give. I just say I talk too much, and then I shut up. If they ask any more questions, it's now on them. And at the end, I get to say, "I told you at the beginning."